Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today TV. I'm Sakshi Batra. Well, the CBDT has released the income tax return forms for the assessment year 2023-24. Now, income tax return forms 1 to 6 and income tax verification form for this assessment year 2023-24 have been notified. Remember, these forms will be used for return filing for income made in the financial year 2023. Now, what are these changes that have been notified in these forms, and what all additional information that you as taxpayers will need to now provide to the tax department is something we will find out on this show. Joining us to give us more clarity on what these notified forms are, joining in with me is Ms. Aarti Raote, partner Deloitte India. Aarti, welcome to Business Today TV. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Well, first up, to give us a broad understanding to all our viewers, we do know that these 6 forms have been notified along with the verification form. So what are these notified ITR forms 1 to 6, and any changes in the eligibility criteria that was there earlier?
Thank you for having me here. And yes, I would say this is a welcome change, because last year the forms had been notified as on 30th of March. So the people were able to file their returns from 1st of April onwards. But this year, the forms have actually been notified in February. So that's really, really in advance. All the forms have been notified, and honestly, for the salary taxpayer, there have not been too much of changes uh, which are asked for in the form. Not too many additional details, but some
Yeah.
of the things which are really, really important, which are based on the budget proposals that had come
Sure.
in last year.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely. We'll come to those changes one by one as well. But you did mention a very important point, that these forms have been notified earlier than expected. So what will this result in? Will it result in a smooth process of tax filing? Will it result in more time to the taxpayers and, timely fashion that they can file their ITRs?
Yes, of course. I think it is going to be a good thing if the taxpayers who have a substantial amount of income really go through the forms and look at the details. And we will talk about what are the changes in these forms in a moment now. But definitely making sure that things are there in place before the tax filing season starts, or even before the financial year starts, makes it really very nice for the taxpayer that everything is in place. We had a couple of years where there were a lot of glitches on account of the new portal being, coming in place right in June, when it was a tax filing season for the salaried taxpayer, and it created a lot of issues. And then the return filing due date kept on extending. So
Sure.
I think this year the government has CBDT has come out with the forms quite in advance.
Sure. Are there any major changes to the ITR 1 specifically, the Sahaj form, which is the most commonly used by salary taxpayers out there?
So the ITR 1 is a form which is specifically filed by individuals who are residents. So if you are a resident but not ordinary resident, or you are a non-resident, you can't really file this ITR form. So uh, also, there are some other conditions, like, for example, your income cannot be exceeding 50 lakhs. You should have only one house property. Or if you have brought forward losses or income from capital gains, then you will have to use ITR 2. So ITR 1 is used by only people who have salaried income from other sources, and only one house property, and who are residents in India.
Sure.
And for these people, there has not been too much of change. The only probably a very subtle change which is there is you have your filings that are required in case of search and seizure processes. And at that point of time, the tax authorities can ask the persons to file a tax return. And there was not, I mean, the earlier ITR forms did not provide for this kind of a concession. And hence, now it has been enabled here. So that is one
Okay.
change.
Okay.
There is another smaller change saying that there is a criteria to, for people who really mandatorily need to file a tax return. And one of the criteria over there is if you're depositing more than 1 crore in cash in a current account. But this has been taken out, and I guess the reason could be probably that salaried people may not be able to open a current account. So this is not really a criteria which is applicable to them. And if you have business income, then you anyway can't use this form.
Okay. And in the remaining forms, I did read somewhere that a new schedule for reporting income from the virtual digital assets has been now included under the capital gains head. Now, what does it mean, especially for all those investors of cryptocurrencies? Now, this could be taken in as one step ahead from what the government had announced in the previous to previous budget on cryptocurrencies, and that had become the biggest talking point. And after that, we've seen a continuous slide in cryptocurrencies, both worldwide and in India as well. But adding this, what all will the taxpayers need to furnish now as additional information?
So this specific schedule has been introduced because of the changes that have been brought out in the budget 2022, which sought to tax virtual digital assets. So obviously there has to be a place where people are now going to declare it. Earlier, people were declaring it as a part of income from other sources or as capital gains, but now there is a specific schedule where you have to declare your income from transfer of virtual digital assets. And the details requested are basically your cost of acquisition, your sale consideration, when did you acquire, and when did you transfer the asset. And based on how many transactions you had during the year, you will have to provide those details.
Okay, understood as well. Besides this, the forms have also been amended, I believe, to include additional questions that relate to the selection of the new tax regime, which has been announced in this current budget. So, what will the taxpayers who already were in the new tax regime before this need to do now? And what about those who may be now in the old tax regime but may now have an intention to shift?
So this was something which was there in the past ITR forms also,
Okay.
and specifically for the salaried class, they do have an option to change year on year. So even if you have selected the old tax regime in the earlier years, you can shift to new tax regime, and vice versa. It's based specifically on how beneficial which tax regime is to you, basis that you can make that change. And there's a simulator which the tax department has also provided, or you can work out your own calculations and see how are you going to save taxes, or what are the taxes you will pay in the regular tax regime versus the simplified tax regime. So you just have to check the box, and those specific uh, schedules will be enabled or disabled.
Okay. Has there been any changes with respect to TCS or the tax collected at source? Any changes to that in these newly notified forms?
Yeah, basically there has been one change in the TCS section, where there were the option that has been enabled is to claim the TCS reflecting in someone else's Form 26 years, and you can carry forward the same in the future years or utilize the same earlier deducted taxes in the current year. So it's in line with the TDS schedule where you have, there's a mismatch in the financial years.
Okay, understood that. What about the stock market investors, the newly introduced section under, say, trading account? What will one need to really need for furnish here if somebody is a stock market investor? What additional information?
So it's the same kind of data which is provided as per capital gains. It is a separate kind of a schedule that is there, and you have a process of adding each of your incomes for those years.
Okay, so
Those
both turnover and the income from intraday trading must now be reported under this section?
Yes, that's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. And what about the foreign institutional investors as well? A disclosure here also they will have to give additional details. What details will they need to furnish now?
Sorry, but FIIs is not my domain. Yes, actually.
Okay, okay, understood that. Any other, important point that you noted in the current ITR forms, anything that has been notified, which is a, different something from the past as a practice?
No, I think the changes have been kept to a minimal. But one of the things actually, probably which is of interest, is in November, the government had come out with a draft, common ITR form, right? And this common ITR form was to used to be consolidate all the existing ITR forms. It was supposed to make things easy for the taxpayers, and the government had actually circulated this to get some comments from the taxpayers and the professionals. Um, and the form would use smart wizards, so it will save a lot of time and effort for the taxpayers. That was the intent.
Mm.
Now, the whole idea is what I believe these forms have been notified, and maybe the government CBDT will work on the common ITR, and
Mm.
that would also be provided to the taxpayers. So the taxpayers would have an option to go in for the individual forms or the common ITR, whichever suits them.
Sure. So this is a very important point that you really mentioned, that once the common ITR form really comes about, it will be perhaps easier or simpler for investors and taxpayers to find out and to file these taxes over. There have been, I'm sure you must have also come across instances where people do not file the income tax returns in the right forms that they are required to do. What then happens, so far what has been the practice if somebody does not follow this norm of falling under the correct form and files the ITR under a wrong form, and now with the coming of the common ITR, will that problem get resolved?
So, Sakshi, what happens is people generally start to fill up the form, and somewhere in the middle they realize, oh, I have capital gains, but I'm using ITR one. So then they have to redo everything again, right? So if you select the wrong form, you probably are doing double the efforts than you would have done earlier. And hence because if you're feeling certain things, let's say your income exceeds 50 lakhs and you still go on to ITR 1, what you probably will see is that you're getting an error message. So in those kind of circumstances, you're spending much more time in that scenario. uh, while we have not yet examined how the utility for the common ITR would be, but the intent of the government, at least, is that it will save you more time and it is going to be easy on your efforts uh, to do this. They will have a common set of questions which you will have to answer, and basis that only the requisite schedules will be enabled for you. So you will not have to maneuver through a whole set of schedules and look at a lot of sections which may not really be applicable to you.
Hmm.
But having said that, if you are not checking the right boxes, then yes, you are going to have a little bit of back and forth over there. So let's say you have capital gains income, but you don't check the right box, then you will have to go back, check that box, and only then the schedule probably will be enabled for you.
Right. So, Aarti, in the end, if you could just sum up for all our viewers, right, that the top three takeaways from these new notified norms and what all investors, viewers in general need to now remember when they approach their ITR filing.
So, in terms of the new ITR forms, the CBDT has been nice enough to provide you all the details. So please go before filing, look at which form applies to you basis your sources of income, and make sure you're checking out the right forms. Uh, there are very few changes from last year, which are now going to be applicable at least for the salary class. The biggest is, of course, for the BDA transfers, the virtual digital asset transfer. So that those are the details that you should keep handy. Uh, it is always recommended that you make sure that you collate all the details of your income in time, because a lot of times what happens is people start filing their returns collect a lot of documentation, and halfway through they realize, oh, but they do not have certain TDS details or certain income details are missing. In those cases, they will have to go back to those providers and get those details. So make sure that you have a checklist where you're checking out whether you have the details in place or not before starting off to file the tax return. And one of the things which is really recommended is to make sure, see, we have a paperless return. So you're not really filing any documents with the return as such. But
Correct.
what you need to do is to archive all the basic documents, all the base documents with you to make sure that if in case you have an audit at a later stage, you are able to produce these details in a timely manner without asking for any adjustments. And there is, I mean, you're able to substantiate what you have filed in your tax returns.
All
Also,
right. Yeah. Yeah, please continue.
just one last thing. Uh, the government has provided you or enabled the data for the investments, the sales, the transfers, the assets that you've procured in the annual information statement that is provided to you. So please make sure that you're looking at the annual information statement as well as your 26 years, because those are information which are available with the tax department also. So any mismatch over there, that's the primary thing which will come. So that's it.
Absolutely. So those are very, very pertinent points. I do hope all our viewers are noting all of these points down before you approach and see what are the changes that have been introduced to your own forms as well. At the outset, not many changes or not, huge differences have been made. It's still the same, but just slight additions to some of the sections, to some of the forms have been made in these newly notified forms. So please go ahead and check out these forms as well, and do speak to your own financial advisors. Many thanks, Aarti, for being with us and breaking this down for all our viewers to help them understand what are these changes and how does it really impact the common man out there. For all our viewers, let me just quickly sum up for all of you that the CBDT has released these new notified forms as well, which includes the ITR 1, which is the Sahaj form, ITR 2, ITR 3, ITR 4 Sugam, ITR 5, ITR 6, and ITR verification and the acknowledgement forms as well. Although no significant changes have been made, but do remember that a new disclosure has been added when you talk about the salary and income from other sources, income from the retired benefit accounts. That's a disclosure to be made by the taxable income for a relief under 89A. That was claimed in the earlier years as well. A separate schedule VDA, that's for cryptocurrencies, virtual digital assets. If you have invested in any profits from the VDAs or cryptos, must be reported under this schedule. If the VDA is treated as capital gains, a quarterly breakup must be provided under the capital gains schedule. Every transaction of VDA must be reported along with the dates of sales and purchase. So that's an important one. If you are a crypto investor, please note it down. These are the changes that you will find in the newly notified forms. On the intraday trading, disclosure as well for all those viewers of you. Most of us, our viewers are also stock market investors. If you are an intraday trader, as per the new income tax forms, the turnover and the income from intraday trading must be reported under the newly introduced section trading account right there. Also, with the new announcements on the new tax regime coming in, a new questionnaire in ITR 3 and ITR 4 have been added to determine if the taxpayer has opted out of the new tax regime in the previous years as well. Of course, for FIIs, there's been a new disclosure that is required for them to fill up. They must provide that their SEBI registration number as an additional disclosure measure as well. So these are the important, details that one will have to really, provide while filing of the ITR. For this assessment year as well. And with that, we wrap up this edition of Business Today TV, but a whole lot more information related to stock markets, business updates, anything that matters to you and to your wallet will be up for you. So don't go anywhere. Do stick with us on Business Today TV. And also you can continue to engage with us via other social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and Instagram. Until then, many thanks for tuning in.